everyone, my name is Veronica Casal, and today I'll be talking about plant tissue systems. The plant tissue systems basically make up the plant structure or the anatomy of the plant. And usually when we talk about plants, we think about vascular plants, which are the plants that have the roots, the stems, and the leaves. But the roots, stems, and the leaves are actually made up of tissues that transport water and nutrients from one part of the plant to the other. Now, there are three tissue systems that are established during embryogenesis, which is the dermal tissue, the ground tissue, and the vascular tissue. So the dermal tissue forms the epidermis of the plant, and that means that everything we see from the plant, the outside, is formed by the dermal tissue. The dermal tissue includes four main things: the stomata, the trichomes, the root hairs, and the cuticle. The stomata are the pores for gas exchange. They include guard cells, which allow water to evaporate out of the plant and take in carbon dioxide for use for sugar production. Now, see how each guard cell opens to let in the carbon dioxide from the air around the plant, and they do this when there's moisture outside of the plant, and they open and close, and that's how the plant receives enough gas exchange to survive. Next up are the trichomes, which are the leaf hairs that protect the plant from things like herbivores and damaging solar radiation. They also prevent the loss of water and protect the plants overall. Here in the picture to the left, we see a kind of white coat surrounding the plant. Kind of looks a little bit like water droplets, but they're actually the trichomes. And in the picture to the left, the right, my apologies, we see a diagram of root hairs. And the root hairs, what they do is increase root surface area, used primarily for the absorption of the plant. And as I mentioned before, the cuticle is just a waxy surface that surrounds the plant. That is why when you touch a leaf, it kind of has like a little soft feel, like a soft cover to it. And that's because of the cuticle. Next, we'll move into the ground tissue, which lies between the dermal and vascular tissue. And between the ground tissue, there are three cell types: the parenchyma cells, the collenchyma cells, and the sclerenchyma cells. Here you can see them a little better. The parenchyma cells make up the primary cell wall. They are the most abundant cell. They contain large vacuoles and thin cell walls. Can any of you identify the vacuoles in this diagram? Yep, you're right. All of these blank spaces are the large vacuoles. And the parenchyma cells basically aid in the process of photosynthesis, and they store many proteins and starches. And the way that I remember parenchyma cells is that they make up the primary cell walls. So parenchyma, primary cell wall. Now the sclerenchyma cells make up the secondary cell wall, and they have very thick cell walls which provide extra support for the plant. And this support is made up of lignin, which provides rigidity and forms the woody cell wall of the plant. And these cells are programmed for cell death, which is apoptosis, once the cell matures. And they provide support for the plant overall. So sclerenchyma, secondary cell wall. And finally, the collenchyma cells are the elongated cells And they also have thick cell walls, but unlike the sclerenchyma cells, their cells are living. And they are affected by mechanical stress upon the plant, unlike the sclerenchyma, which have full-on support and they're not as malleable as the parenchyma cells. And how I remember parenchyma cells is because of celery. Celery you can kind of bend and twist and be kind of malleable. But they also have like a thickness to it, a protection. And so parenchyma, celery. That's how I got it. Okay. Next is the vascular tissue, the last tissue of the tissue system. And the vascular tissue is basically the transport system of the plant. And it has two major conducting systems, the xylem and the phloem. The xylem is represented here. 1, 2, and 3 is the whole xylem. And here represented 4 in this thin layer is the phloem. So the xylem is in charge of carrying water and minerals from roots to the rest of the plant. And the phloem is basically made up of living cells that move carbohydrates from production sites to sites where they are going to be used and stored. So they basically move water and sugar throughout the plant. And so, in conclusion, to tie all of this that we have discussed already, have this little diagram, we can see the tissue systems and their functions, their components, and where they are located within the plant. Here, the purple is represents the vascular tissue, the green represents the ground tissue, and the outer red represents the dermal tissue. And see how they are located in the leaves, in the stem, and in the roots. Going back and recapping, the dermal tissue was a system of protection for the plant. And they also prevented water loss. So we discussed the stomata, the trichomes, and the root hairs, and also the cuticle. So everything outside that protects the plant is due to the dermal tissue. The ground tissue, which lies in between the dermal and the vascular tissue, is in charge of photosynthesis, food storage, support, and protection. And it is divided into tissue, which are the parenchyma tissue, the parenchyma tissue, and the sclerenchyma tissue. And the parenchyma, remember the primary cell wall, which was the most abundant and contains large vacuoles and helps in storing protein and starches. The parenchyma is the elongated cells with the thick cell walls but are malleable, like celery. And the sclerenchyma cells are the very thick cell walls that provide extra support, and they make up the woody part of the plant. And lastly, the vascular tissue system that transports water and minerals throughout the plant is made up of the xylem and the phloem, which the xylem carries water and minerals from the roots to the rest of the plant, and the phloem are the living cells that move carbohydrates to where they're needed and stored. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you so much. I hope this helps a lot.